Welcome. Good evening, and this is the Ogden City Redevelopment Agency meeting for January 9th, 2018. Let the record reflect that all board members are present today. The first thing on our agenda today is the Pledge of Allegiance, which I'll turn the time to Vice Chair Nadolski for that.
Thank you. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you would now join us for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the joint work session of September 12th, 2017. Board Member Blair?
Yes, thank you, Chair Heyer. I have reviewed those minutes and found them to be accurate. And I would go ahead and make a motion, now that I'm on record, to go ahead and approve those. Okay,
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Blair, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski to approve the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. Next item is public hearings. Item A, Adams Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Mr. Brandon Cooper will be making that presentation.
Mr. Cooper, welcome.
Chair Heyer, members of the board, good evening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service as usual. Tonight, it's my pleasure to present to you a lot of hard work and effort over the last few months from a lot of folks. The Adams Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan and Budget. So for the sake of the record and for the sake of those who have come to witness this tonight and those folks in attendance, I'd like to just cover a few elements of the plan. Also, I'd like to combine items A1 and A2 in terms of discussions of the plan itself, along with the interlocal agreements that are associated with the plan. So as a preface to all of the work that we do in the redevelopment agency, I like to talk about the driver behind it, the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. This is a joint initiative adopted by the city and the City Council in 2015 to stabilize and revitalize Ogden's neighborhood as neighborhoods of choice. And so this strategy has a lot of components built into it, and these are the components that we look at as we strive to make changes in neighborhoods. Redevelopment plans are essentially a tool to help create some of these components. I won't go over each one of these things, but these are components that are based on best practices. They're also components that are suited for our neighborhoods and our city specifically. So anytime an RDA plan is brought forward, it's really to implement these components of a quality neighborhood that were made part of the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. As part of the process in creating an RDA plan, in addition to the statutory process that's required in Utah Code 17C, we also have adopted an administrative process that allows us to reach out to the public in the area that we're identifying as a potential study area or redevelopment area. In this case, we conducted 2 open houses. One open house was on the 25th of January last year. The second was on March 9th of last year. The first open house allowed us to gather some feedback from those in attendance, and the second open house allowed us to present that feedback to those who were in attendance originally, and then any of those who came additionally. And then from that feedback, we created what is known as a community investment framework document. That's the internal roadmap, the administrative document that we used to help guide our work in determining the boundary of the redevelopment area as well as the objectives and goals that we would like to see take place. Through those two public outreach efforts, those open houses, we had in attendance about 35 to 40 people, 154 combined comments. We asked them to identify bright spots and impediments and then just general comments. So we had 44 comments about those things that people liked, bright spots, 81 comments about those things that folks would like to see change or things that they didn't like in terms of what's happening in the geographical boundary, and then just 29 general comments. So from those comments and from our original analysis, we created this geographical boundary. This is the redevelopment area boundary that we would establish through the plan. 20th Street to 28th Street, Washington to the east side of Jefferson, essentially. And you can see it jogs on the back side of some of the properties along Washington Boulevard. We determined that some of those properties weren't necessary to be part of the plan. The reason why this map looks like this is because the 20th Street and the 28th Street really are the boundaries of our central business district, essentially, to the west. And this neighborhood acts as a transition neighborhood between that central business district and the east central neighborhood. So we felt that this neighborhood is an important one in connecting those two parts of the city and allowing transitions to happen, making sure that the uses that went from the dense commercial uses of the downtown transitioned well into residential uses into the neighborhoods. So that's why the north-south boundary looks the way that it does. The east-west boundary, again, is just that strip that is that transitional neighborhood. The farther you get into the neighborhood into the east, you tend to get into a different development pattern, a different kind of neighborhood. The farther you go west, again, same thing. So it's really a unique area, and so we felt that looking at it collectively, how it speaks to itself, how it speaks to other parts of the neighborhoods to the east and the west was important. So keep that in mind. That's the geographical boundary that determines all of these numbers. All of the commercial and residential properties in that geographical boundary are worth $60 million in taxable value. That's the base year valuation as established by Utah Code. We anticipate through the projected projects that there would be 123 roughly million dollars worth of new expenditures if there was redevelopment support. And I'll talk about what projects comprise that $123 million worth of development here in a minute. So that would add about $95 million worth of new taxable value to that $60 million base over a 25-year period. So we're looking at the duration of the project area to be 25 years, although the school district in their participation would be contributing for 20 years, and I'll get to that in a moment as I talk about the interlocal agreements. You can see there that we've asked 3 of the taxing entities to participate, the city, the school district, and the county. Tonight we'll be talking about an interlocal agreement between the agency and the city, and also an interlocal agreement between the agency and the school district. The agreement between the county and the agency is still forthcoming, and that will be presented to you at a later date. The numbers that you see along the lines of each entity are maximum amounts of contribution that we would ask that they participate in. So in this case, the city would be asked to participate at a $2.5 million level and the school district at a $5.7 million level. And I'll come back to those in just a moment. In terms of the budget, the entire amount collectible by the agency would be $10.8 million. So if you go back to those numbers there, that equals $10.8 million. Of that $10.8 million available to to return it to the development community as incentive or to invest in infrastructure or to use as project expenditures is $7.9 million. $2.1 million is specifically set aside for housing. That's by state statute, so that would be actually separated as it's collected into our housing fund, and then that housing fund could be used on projects throughout the city, even outside of this geographical boundary. And then state law allows us to collect for agency administration costs, which is an average of 6%. It's a graduated level, 5 and then 10. So it averages to 6, and that equals $663,000 over 25 years. Some of the key projects here, I won't go over all of these things, but some of the key projects that make up that $124 million investment would be the restoration of the Ben Lomond parking garage. That is proposed to be turned into an art garage and a potential makerspace, and so we're excited about what that could look like. The renovation of the Ben Lomond Hotel, they've made some improvements to that hotel. It's now changed over to the Bigelow Hotel. I know those owners are looking to make additional improvements to the property, which would enhance its value and also the user experience. The First Security Bank building is one of the most important buildings that we have in our downtown. As you heard in the work session, that building is important not only from its historic content and the character that it has, but because of its small footprint and its high elevation, it provides a unique opportunity, unlike others in the city, to be a great place to work, a great place to live. So we're anxious to see that building get redeveloped. The Peary Apartments is another great historic property inside of the district that is proposed to be renovated into market rate apartments. And there would be other various housing projects, both single family and multifamily. As a transition area, it's important to have a blend of both, because the eastern neighborhoods are largely single-family homes. The western neighborhood in the downtown wants to be and is turning into be a multifamily, more dense environment. So this transitional area acts as both. But as we look at the proposals, we're seeing about a 10-to-1 ratio. So for every single-family home that could be built in this 25-year plan under the $124 million budget, we see about 10 apartments being built. So we still want to make sure that we're focused on density, we're focused on walkable elements, so that we have not only the population to be walking, but also the amenities that they would want to walk through and to. And also the consolidation of parking. If you look at some of these blocks within this area, they're very inefficient in terms of the way that the land use is. Lots of surface parking. We want to utilize tools to help our parking situations become better. And that generally means consolidating surface parking into structured parking. In the plan, we have identified a number of development objectives. Again, I won't go through all of these. Upgraded infrastructure is a major element that we would like to see obtained. The promotion and the enhancement of historic properties. So that's a key element of preserving some of the history, history and character of this neighborhood and of Ogden. It's an important factor to the administration as it is to the board, and so we feel that any incentive that would be given through the project area would have a component that would require the preservation of enhancement of historic properties. Obviously, I've talked about new commercial buildings, new multifamily structures, things that would enhance the taxable valuation of the city, as well as give people safe, creative, and walkable places to live and work. And again, these are some of the general design objectives along with the development objectives that we've identified. Provide safe and attractive pedestrian features, again, those walkable elements. Complement existing historical elements, so the things that are getting built new should have a relationship with the things that are existing. And then we are an urban environment. We strive to continue to develop as an urban environment, so that means that we would look to employ urban best practices. And the law requires us to provide a document that's in the plan that talks about public benefit. Of course, economic stimulation is always a benefit when you see an infusion of capital and an infusion of investment. We look to have direct employment in this area, as well as the conjoining areas in the downtown, new quality residential units, and again, an increased walkable community that's safe and prosperous. So I'll just touch on the process, and then we'll go back to the interlocal agreements, and then I can explain those a little bit more. Again, the process that we're following is defined in Utah State Code 17C. We've conducted items 1, 2, and 3. We're here today having a public hearing. The plan has been available at the city offices for the last 30 days. We have received numerous phone calls, mostly relative to questions about how this impacts property owners. There has been questions about eminent domain. So this plan does not seek eminent domain. We will not be looking at acquiring as an agency properties through eminent domain. It would all be through open and fair negotiations with property owners. In terms of the other questions, there was questions about the size of the RDA. I think I've covered that. We tried to mimic the CBD in terms of that transitional area. We are focused on consolidating parking to make sure any new parking is efficient, and if there's existing parking, we can correct maybe some of the inefficiencies that exist there. And then again, the questions about multifamily versus single family. I think there's a reason for both in this area, but it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So any single family home would be met with up to 10 multifamily units to keep that dense, walkable environment. So those are the questions that we've received in terms of public comment. Obviously, there may be some comments tonight, and if there are, we'd be willing to look at incorporating some of those if necessary and appropriate. Pending tonight's approval, our next step would then to be moved to the City Council and to adopt an ordinance accepting the project area plan from the community side. So let me go back for a moment to the 3 interlocal agreements. Recently, state law changed that allowed an agency to receive taxable contribution from the taxing entities through individual negotiations instead of a taxing entity committee. Generally, a taxing entity committee was made up of all 10 or 11 taxing entities, and they had a collective vote as to whether or not they'd approve the project area plan and what the contribution levels were. Now, the agency is required to negotiate those contributions on an individual level from each taxing entity. We've chosen to approach 3 of them, the city, the school district, and the county, in terms of that participation. Tonight, you will be taking action on the interlocal agreement between the agency and the school district as the board, and also the agency and the city. So the Ogden School District interlocal agreement is a 20-year agreement, and the maximum contribution that would be obtained from the school district would be $5.7 million. That's a cap, so if that $5.7 million was reached prior to the 20-year period, then that interlocal agreement would cease, and we would no longer collect those taxes. They would flow through to the school district. Additionally, the city interlocal agreement is for $2.5 million. It's a 25-year period, but the same cap exists, meaning that if the $2.5 million is reached prior to the 25-year mark, then the agreement ceases to exist. Those are the 2 agreements that you'll be taking action on tonight. The 3rd agreement would be forthcoming, and we can talk more about that when it comes, but that would equal the total of the $10.8 million, which is in the budget in terms of the maximum amount collectible from the agency. One other quick note.
Sorry, before you go on, would you mind repeating those caps, the 2 that you just talked about?
So the cap from the city's interlocal agreement, the city and the agency, would be 2.5, so exactly $2,567,599.
Over the life?
Over 25 years. The Ogden School District cap would be $5,751,879 over a 20-year period. Does that answer your question?
So just, in other words, if those amounts aren't met in that time frame, the time frame is the stopper, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But if they're met before, then you said the agreement, it dissolves or
It's satisfied, essentially.
satisfied. And so is there a particular timeline on when that needs to be met?
No, again, it's either a dollar amount or a time frame, whichever comes first. The trigger on which that date starts is either the year we collect tax increment or January of 2019. In this case, if the district is approved tonight, we won't be collecting tax increment for tax year 17, so essentially year one would be 2019. So it would be 20 years for the school district from 2019 to 2039, and from 25 years from 2019 for the city.
What kind of installment payments are made? Is there an arrangement for a yearly installments of a certain amount?
It's a percentage, so it's 100% of the incremental value between the $60 million and whatever value is gained over that period. So it's 100% from the city and 100% from the school district at this point. So in some cases, the valuation goes down. So let's say that the 2017 valuation was $60 million, and for some reason the 2018 valuation was $59 million. The agency wouldn't receive anything. But if the 2018 valuation was $62 million, then the incremental value would be $2 million, and then those ratios would come into play along with the certified tax rates of the city and the school district. Does that make sense? Is there any other questions about the interlocal agreements or the project area plan and budget?
Are there questions for Brandon? Mr. Cooper? Okay.
I do have some questions, if that's okay.
Yes, Councilmember
Sorry.
Trevecca. Go
I
ahead.
started asking some questions in the work session, and I wasn't able to finish. So I appreciate those of you that have already heard answers to these things. But so I had a question from some constituents about how a resident or developer gains access to the funds or the development resources in this area.
So the resources that the agency has by virtue of the interlocal agreements is the tax increment that would be collected from the entities, as I just described. So those are the resources that we would have available to us to then convey to a developer. As I mentioned a minute ago, even though the collectible amount is $10.8 million total, the available for general development incentive is only $7.9 million, because we factor out the $2 million and the $600,000 for the administrative. So the resource available is the $7.9 million. How a developer can access that is through an application process. So we have a formalized application that's requested, and we send it out. It's got information about the project, information about the developer, financials, project area plan, or project-specific plans, and then we look at all kinds of factors that are related to the quality neighborhood components. So variety, transportation factors, secure environment. So we look at what this proposed project is going to do. If it checks the boxes, then we enter into a development agreement with the developer, which comes back to the board for final approval. In some cases, it would go through the Planning Commission from a site approval standpoint, but in terms of the financial incentive that's being requested by the developer, that would always come back to the redevelopment board.
Does that also count for people that just own the buildings, or do they have to have a development agency?
No, private owners can redevelop their own land. They can engage in negotiations with other developers that would then come forward on their behalf. The agency could buy property and act as a developer and would have access to that tax increment. So
when you say the agency, you're always talking about the city?
Well, you folks are acting
Redevelopment
as the
agency.
agency now.
Sorry,
Right.
I'm new.
But the city sometimes buys property, and the tax increment that the agency received could be contributed to the city as well.
Okay, so we're almost to the end. I have one more question for you. So at this time, do you know if there's one individual or one entity that has more than one project or plan in the works for this area in particular?
Yes, we've been working with one developer that has at least two projects that I know of in the area. those applications are being formalized, the development agreements are being formalized, so that those projects would come to you, again, with a full presentation and an approval at a future date. Great.
Thank you.
Those are good questions, Board Member Chabarka.
I have a question. The one email said, thought that the size of the Adams community was too large. Can you address that?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the size of an area could be based on a lot of things. In this case, we based the size of the area to mimic the width of the central business district, from 20th Street to 28th Street, roughly, and then to be as narrow as what the transition neighborhood is between the East Central and the downtown. So we looked at the things that connect the very urban, dense downtown to what largely is a single-family residential development in the East Central. And that's that strip of land that we've identified. There's a lot of key components there. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of historic buildings. So although it is a wide district, it's not the largest district that we have, and I think it's sized appropriate to do the job that we set out to do based on those objectives in the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative.
Will we be using any mixed use into this area, or is that not possible?
No, absolutely. Some of those design objectives and development objectives require a look at mixed-use buildings to maximize that value, to maximize that space, to create efficient parking scenarios, and this is one of those great neighborhoods that could have commercial and residential all on the same lot. You can't say that as you've moved farther to the east in a lot of places, but this is that area because it's so close to the downtown that can really handle a mixed-use type of a product without being out of scope, so to speak.
Any other questions for Brandon?
I have a couple. Did we consider a shorter time frame from the city standpoint than 25 years? Something to mimic the school districts?
We did, and we looked at the list of projects that would be likely proposed in the area, those that I mentioned already. As we look at these projects and some of the needs that they would have, that's how we draft the budget. And the budget really dictates the length of time that you would need to acquire the increment that would be necessary to make some of these projects happen. Statute allows us 32 years. The school district was comfortable with 20. To make the budget work, the city and the county would have to participate at 25.
Any other questions?
And keep in mind that the school districts, even in that 20-year period, the school district's participation is more than double than the two at 25.
One other quick question, or it's maybe a clarification. You talk about the Bigelow parking garage, and I think from feedback from some of my constituents, they think it's actually the parking structure. Can you describe what the parking garage is?
This is a terrible map for that, but
It's the
behind the Ben Lomond
building
Hotel,
behind, yeah.
It's actually separated by Ogden Avenue. So behind the Ben Lomond directly is the Courtyard Inn, which is now owned by the redevelopment agency. And then there's Ogden Avenue, and then there's the old Ben Lomond garage. That garage served as the motor garage for the Ben Lomond Hotel. It's been vacant for a number of years. It's been quite a few things. I think it was a dance hall and a Mexican restaurant and all kinds of things. The developer would like to renovate that to be an arts garage, which would basically be artist lofts, exhibit space, a cafeteria, an exhibit a gallery, and a space for a makerspace, a community-based makerspace. So that's the parking just to the east.
Board members, any more questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. This is time for anyone to come and address the board on this topic. Are there any takers? It is really good to see all of you tonight, by the way. Sometimes we sit here by ourselves, and so we appreciate very much citizen participation in these meetings, so thank you for coming. Yes, come forward. Give us your name and address for the record, and limit your
And
Comments
address,
for 3
Kevin
minutes.
Schneider. I have a property on 23rd Street in the district. How does this affect property taxes for landowners in the proposed area?
What we will do is we will take your questions now, and at the end of all the public comments, we will consolidate all the questions and see if we can't get answers for you. Do you have any more?
Yes, how come it jogs from Washington to Adams here? How come it's not like a nice rectangle? How did this be determined here? So that was just my other question, and thank you.
Let's see if you can't get an answer for you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please come forward.
It's Jim Jacobs. And I had a question about incentives. I was wondering if I read the plan correctly, that the incentives are post-project. Is that correct?
There again, we'll get you those at the conclusion of all the public comments.
Yes.
We'll get the
Oh,
answers, so.
Okay. And I had one other question.
Okay, please.
And that is, if they are post-project, then will they depend on the success of the project? So will the incentives be proportioned out depending on the tax revenue increase that's coming into those entities? And will that vary from year to year depending on, the success of, the occupancy or other factors?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Reverend Bruce Kolash, pastor at Elam Lutheran Church on 23rd and Jefferson. First of all, I want to commend you for doing this because I think it's an admirable thing to do and certainly a needed thing. And then a question for you. Elam Lutheran is one of the oldest Lutheran churches in the state of Utah, and we were within that district. And I was wondering whether it would be possible, despite our being a church or a religious facility, to be able to be included in the historic improvements, and because of our historic building, plus also being just a point of being able to connect with the community to improve the community. Just a question for you. And I would imagine that there would be an application process that we'd have to go through for that, but just a question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Smith.
Nick Smith, 530 23rd Street. So being somebody who didn't live in the Adams Avenue project, coming out from the east bench of Ogden, I definitely want to tell you that I would support this. I think it's a great idea. And we bought a historic house to bring value to the downtown area with a family, to revitalize it the way it used to be. And so I just wanted you to consider that I think this is a great idea that we should definitely support in putting money towards bringing more single families, more people who are adventurous into bringing the old historic part of Ogden back to life. So that's all.
For your support. Anyone else?
Seeing no more movement, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Vice Chair Nadolski, second by Board Member Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, any discussion before we make a resolution?
Chair, did you want us to answer
Then do you want to
those
have Brandon come up?
questions?
A little ahead of myself. Let's go through some of those answers. We have a few, so who wants to do it?
I counted 5.
Yeah, I got about that many too.
Okay, those are good questions. Let me start with the first one. How does the proposed project area affect property taxes? This is a good question. It's a common question. Implementing a project area plan and budget does not increase taxes directly. There is no direct implication to taxes other than natural growth appreciation as a result of direct investment in an area. So we're always looking to, as property owners, to see our values increase because that means our investment is worth more. It's a double-edged sword because we pay property taxes commensurate with that growth. But as a result of your action tonight, you will not be raising taxes. You will not be putting in an assessment of any kind on these properties. There is no fee associated with this. All that happens is that we designate an area that then is a collection area that allows us to use the taxes that otherwise would have went to, that likely wouldn't have existed and would have went to other entities to then kind of focus investment in the area. So I hope that clarifies that question. Why does it jog on Washington? I mentioned that briefly in the presentation. As we look at these things, we try not to include properties in the area that don't have a redevelopment future, meaning they're going to be what they are now, and by including them, it would actually take them out of taxable production otherwise. So we try not to do that, and that's why we carved out a lot of that those commercial properties on Washington. We didn't feel like we could make a dramatic change to those properties, and we didn't want to exclude the property taxes that they're currently being paid from the entities that are receiving them. So there was just no need for that. So
What about the little bump on the top? Why don't you explain that one?
The little bump on the top actually is the opposite of what I just said, because that's the front door of the school. There's homes on both sides of the front door of the school, the New Bridge School. We felt, and with the redevelopment of the old D School site, we felt that block face had an opportunity to see some investment and some improvement to help what's being done in terms of the school district's work and the redevelopment of the old school site. So we felt by jogging up a little bit, it would really make sense to connect the New Bridge School to what's happening down below.
Chair Heyer, may I just make a comment? Mr. Cooper, isn't there also an existing development district or project area in the 4 blocks, in that 4-block area that's carved out?
Correct. I don't know if you can see my hand here, but this area right here is already an RDA. So this is the East Washington Urban Renewal Area, and so we would just be contiguous to it. The third question was, are incentives post-project? And the answer to that is yes. What happens when a developer or property owner enters into a development agreement, then any incentives that are negotiated as part of that agreement come as a percentage of what is gained. So if your property was worth $1 at the inception of this, the base year, and your improvements caused it to be worth $2, well, you've increased its taxable value by $1, and so the negotiation between the agency and you as a developer would be how much of that dollar in a percentage would you receive back as an incentive for making that investment. Generally, one of the criteria that we use as we make decisions around those incentives is, why is the incentive needed? Is it just to make a larger margin on the property, or is it really needed to make the property feasible in the first place? That's how we would like to use public dollars. This isn't meant to grow the pockets of developers or property owners. This is meant to make things happen that otherwise couldn't happen because the market forces aren't sufficient enough to cause it to happen. And for those reasons, we would then look at a post-performance, because that's the only way that money is there in the first place, is if that investment's made, and then on a percentage basis, that incentive can come back. The ancillary question to that first question was, does it depend on the success of the project? Generally, yes, because if you're creating a rental project, whether it's commercial or residential, then usually the value is derived from the tenancy on an income basis through an appraisal. But a lot of times the taxable value can be increased just through the fact that you've made improvements to the property. So generally, the success of the project drives the value, which then generates the incentive that could be returned back to the property owner or developer. And then the last question that was asked was, could the church be included in terms of the historic improvements that are being made? That's a good question. I'd like to have some additional discussion with the gentleman about that. We've never participated in a development agreement with a church, largely because churches are tax exempt, so there's no taxable value there to increase to then bring back to the project. But in some cases, there could be ways to assist in historical preservation and general improvements in other ways. So we'd be happy to have that discussion with the gentleman, and for that matter, anybody else that would be in that situation.
Could he meet with you right after our session here?
Sure.
then? Okay.
Hey, that sounds good.
Thanks.
We'll see if we can't get you guys together. All right. That satisfied the questions, at least that I had on my list. Any discussion amongst the board members? Look for a resolution.
Board Chair Heyer, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2017-11 as presented.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, second by Board Member Stevens, to approve Resolution 27-11. And this is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes unanimously. Look forward
Chair?
to. Yes.
I'm pleased to look at this project as including arts as part of the downtown corridor that we have here, and that's a step in the right direction of improving our city, developing that art district that's so important to us to develop the artists in our area. So,
Yeah, thanks for that
pleased
comment.
with that.
I'm glad you brought that forward. I think that's good for our citizens to know that that's part of this. Next item on our agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity to address, yes, sir? Oh, sorry, I am so far ahead of myself today. Please forgive me. We have another one, so.
Chair Heyer, I make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2018-1.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Board Member Lopez, seconded by Board Member Blair, for approval of Resolution 2018-1. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes. Okay, now, so that I don't forget another one, I think there is one more in the list, so.
I will go ahead and make the motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2018-2.
Second.
Board Member Blair made the motion, and seconded by Board Member White to approve Resolution 2018-2. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes. Okay, we are all okay to go on to public comment? Yeah. Okay. A little rusty. A little rusty. Thanks for mentioning that. It was clear to everyone. Okay, now we have public comment. This is an opportunity to address the board regarding concerns or ideas on any topic. Love to hear from you. Here he comes. Okay. You took the long way.
And Kevin Schneider, 551 23rd Street. There's a piece of property between 24th and Adams and the middle of the block that Ogden City has cleared the lot. It used to be a road, a porter came in, and there was some unused strip mall structures and a bunch of area, and it's now about a 4-acre property. And I had come down to the city and asked what kind of plans were involved in that property, because I have a lot that is adjacent to that, and I was told they don't have any current plans. And I discussed this fencing there, and was told that as part of the contract to develop that property, the contractor was going to build a 6-foot fence, and that hasn't happened. And I have a tenant that's complained that people are now cutting through this lot, throwing their cigarette butts on our property, and just going through what's a private drive. So I was wondering if we could address what happened to the 6-foot fence that was supposed to be built, as that project appears to have been completed about 4 months ago.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Do we have an answer for Mr. Schneider?
I'm hoping Mr. Cooper does, because I don't know what he's referring to.
I'm assuming that project is the demolition project that we just completed. 550 24th Street is how we refer to it. There are development plans being made to develop that project into a residential property. Those plans haven't become public yet. As part of that plan, there would be a new fence surrounding the perimeter of that project. If there are issues now where there's holes in fences that are allowing people to cut through properties, then we can look at maybe plugging some of those holes in the interim until we get a new fence installed. So if you don't mind grabbing me after this, we'll take care of it.
Set you up in the foyer when you're done, when we're done with this meeting. So it's just demoed property, just vacant right now. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
My name's Dave Sawyer. I'm a 30-year property owner, and I have a question about one thing, a land lock. Is there any suggestions on that?
I'm
right
not
in the middle of this project area.
Oh, I see. Look at his paper. I don't think you're going to be able to respond until you see what he's talking about.
There's the property plot map I bought 30 years ago, and I moved in off the 24th.
Come see me after we talk about it.
Really?
Yeah. I'll be out in the hall apparently.
Okay.
Take a number.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to get Brandon a desk outside.
We close at 12.
All right, anyone else?
We could give him a desk out there.
I think we got to get him a desk and a chair.
Cookies.
Okay. All right, we'll move on then. Comments from Executive Director.
Just a couple quick ones. Cooper, I appreciate you being out in the hallway and addressing all these concerns. I appreciate everybody being here as well tonight. I think this is a really unique project area that retains a lot of our history, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have done in putting this together. So thank you very much. And I think the audience in the room obviously reflects the passion for that historic area and making sure we do things. I also want to recognize a few of the people that are homeowners and developers and putting their time, energy, and money into making this creative district and doing everything they can do to make Ogden a better place. Some of them are in the audience tonight, and we really appreciate what you guys are doing here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Board member comments.
For hire, I also want to just thank and appreciate the participation tonight from the public. And I want to congratulate Councilwoman Chaverka for her first meeting, and congratulate Councilmember Nadolski for his first year in leadership. Thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
It's refreshing to see our citizens come up and address some problems that they have so that we can get solutions to them. And if that's how our year's going to go, we're going to have a great year. But I'm pleased with Kevin and Dave for coming in, and that's what real government is all about, is having the citizens propose their questions and see if we can come up with solutions to it. Sometimes they're good and we can work them out, and other times they're not, but it's a refreshing element in that aspect.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I had some, but I'll just talk to Brandon outside after.
I just have a quick comment too, and I think one of the things to follow up with Board Member Stevens' comment is that this was a process that started maybe on the wrong foot. We stopped and we did a different process, and I commend the RDA group for doing that, because I think it's evident by the people that are here tonight and speaking in positive terms, as opposed to the first time around that
Pitchforks and rotten
wasn't
fruit.
so positive. So thank you for stepping back and doing that, so.
Thank you.
I also, I want to thank Brandon as well. I think we have a lot of people here tonight, and they're not here yelling at us. And that is a reflection of the work that all of you guys have done and our CED staff have done ahead of tonight's meeting. It really is a much better process this time. We still have a couple wrinkles that need some attention, but that's what we're here for, and that's what this forum is for. So, thank you.
I do have another comment.
Yes.
I just wanted to say how excited I am that this is one of the first projects that we get to talk about and think about and help to support as a council, as I live just very close, just across the street from this district, and I feel like my family has done a lot to invest in this area, and I'm really excited to see the whole city come together around supporting it as well. So.
Councilmember Blair, is that what your only comment?
I'll make a motion.
You're good. Well, I did want to also welcome Councilmember Chawerka. This is her first meeting with any meat to it. Appreciate you being here, and I look forward to a good year. But I do mean what I said earlier, that it's really great to see our good citizens here to give this input, and this is a substantial project for the city, and I'm very glad to have the input that has come in and the questions that have come through. So now I'll look for that motion.
Adjourn.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Board Member Blair, seconded by Board Member Lopez to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I'm just telling you to. Okay, sure. You found it, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
I asked Brandon to. Maybe that's just how many people want to go talk to Brandon.
Those of you who are on your way out, we are about to start another meeting. If you could take it out into the foyer at this point.
You're asking great questions.
I don't think nobody listened to you, Chair Hire.
Ladies and gentlemen who are talking, if you could exit out to the foyer to continue your conversations. We're going to start another meeting right away.
There you go.
Welcome to stay. We'd love to have you. Are y'all cocked and loaded, Leanne?
They're waiting for you.
Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start our special city council meeting. This is January 9th, 2018, and let the record reflect that all council members are present. The first item on our agenda is recognition. For Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, we've asked Councilmember, you are Councilmember White, right?
No, it's hard.
It's hard to make that change. So we've asked her to present this, and turn the time over to you.
Thank you. This is my honor to do this. It's a joint proclamation of the Ogden City Council and Mayor declaring January 15th, 2018, Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in Ogden. Whereas Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American pastor, activist, and a humanitarian who is best known for his role in the advancement of civil rights using nonviolent civil disobedience, for which he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1965. Dr. King also focused on other important issues, including poverty and war. He was posthumously, that's a hard one, awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. And whereas in 1982, following years of lobbying by millions of Americans, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill into law making the third Monday in January a national holiday to celebrate the birth of Dr. King. Martin Luther King Jr. Day was first observed in 1986. And whereas in 1988, close friends of Dr. King discussed the irony of how so many Americans had fought for a federal holiday honoring Dr. King. Yet, sadly, it had become just another day off from work. They knew Dr. King would be disheartened by the disengagement of the day set aside to honor his devotion to social justice. As a result, the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service was established in Philadelphia, and whereas federal legislation was signed into law by President Bill Clinton in 1994 challenging all Americans to honor Dr. King by devoting the day of citizen action and volunteer service. Several communities, universities, and organizations across the United States have accepted the challenge and participate in the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. And whereas the Ogden branch of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, Marshall White Center, Community Center, and Weber State University have united to sustain the national call to action by honoring Dr. King through a day of service, with volunteers from cities throughout Weber County and Davis County. Events will commence with the Martin Luther King Freedom Breakfast and March at the Marshall White Center. Through this day of remembrance, we strive as a community to retain Dr. King's legacy of service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim January 15th, 2018 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in Ogden City. We encourage residents, schools, businesses, and community groups to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We appreciate the efforts of those in our community to build upon Dr. King's legacy by helping others and encouraging all residents to engage in service on this special holiday. With that, I make a motion to adopt the joint proclamation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember White, second by Councilmember Lopez, to approve the joint proclamation honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, we have Betty
Betty
Sawyer
Sawyer
here with us today. Do you need to come up and receive your plaque first?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's line up for a photo over here too. We're going to take a picture while you're here. All right.
Got to do the other end? Yeah.
And I noticed
That's okay.
something
I got
to do
it.
with this.
Get it. He's already lodged.
For the president, right there.
Hey.
Come on, if you'll stand kind of right here. Yep.
Oh, you got stuff.
I'm gonna be like this tiny
The fact that you're standing next to Ben makes you.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, gosh, we've done this once already today. Closer.
One more. Hold on.
Oh, no. That is terrible.
And Betty, if you'd say a few words.
My desk too, huh?
Hey, not fair.
To our chairperson and all of our city council members, the mayor,
and staff. The first thing I need to say is it's obvious that I'm the only one here tonight, because in my new role as NAACP president, I didn't send out the invite. Okay, so, I get that mark against me. It's like,
Both of us are
it's
having
today.
first day stuff.
What's going on? And I said, it's the holidays, school just started, whatever. But so excited to be a part of this and to have you participate in this joint resolution again this year. This year's theme is We Win with Love for Humanity. And if we ever needed a time and an opportunity to really embrace that theme and what that means, the time is now. As I listen to the RDA meeting and the project that you all have been able to work through and bring to fruition tonight, it's a reminder of those things that we can do when we work together, when we put the needs of others in line with the needs that we have and the resources that we have. Some of the things that Dr. King espoused that Marcia shared with us around love for humanity, around nonviolence, around poverty, around war, around looking after those who are less fortunate than we may be. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Poor People's March as well. 1968 is a very significant year in a number of circles in the civil rights movement. And so I encourage you, as you continue to make policy and develop programs and initiatives, as you work through your budget recommendations, that we continue to think about the impact that the work we have has on our community and those folk that live, work, and play in and around Ogden City, that you get to represent those who may not be able to speak for themselves. And this is an awesome opportunity that you have in this position. So again, I thank you for that. And in closing, one of the quotes of Dr. King that I really like is that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So as we embrace this holiday as a day on and not a day off, an opportunity for us to go out and serve in some capacity, I just thank you again for what you're doing and what I know you will continue to do as our leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. I want to thank you for taking on that role as president of NAACP. That's some responsibility.
Up and get out of here.
There you
What
go.
did you see?
No.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Next item is the request to be on the agenda, and we have Ms. Eller Smith there to do some introductions and some other stuff.
Thank you, Chair Heyer. Normally, we as staff wouldn't be involved in this, but this was kind of my brainchild and my baby, and so I'm just going to take a minute to introduce a few people. First of all, as you know, we have sister city relationship with HOF, and it's been in place for many, many years. And I was going through their website, HOF's website, and I saw this. This is a picture of the HOF City Hall. And I thought, what a cool building. And it made me think of our building, and it happened to be about this time last year. And I remembered that we had a Christmas Village cottage that used to look like our municipal building. I've since found that they don't put it out anymore. It kind of fell apart. But anyway, I got thinking it might be neat to have a Christmas Village cottage that mimic this, as kind of give some homage to our sister city relationship. So I contacted a good friend of mine at Mountain West Architecture, Mark Hillis, who I met through the Chamber Leadership Academy. And I said, hey, Mark, do you think you could help us out with this? And he just jumped right on it. He had Sarah Carr in their office worked it. So they drafted up some plans. And then, of course, I had to contact Bill Bennett, who is our unofficial ambassador for the city. He doesn't live in Ogden City, but he's been a real ambassador for the city with maintaining this whole relationship. And so I contacted him. I said, "Do you think you could help us make this happen?" So that's one view. This is one view. And then Mark called me 2 or 3 weeks later and said, I've talked to Wadman, and they're more than happy to donate the labor to get this built. And so we have Tyler Holland is who I was put in touch with, and I'll let them introduce their one of their retired supers who is already underway building this. So I'd like Bill Bennett to come up, and he has some information he'd like to share with you, and he can explain what they're doing and what's happening with this from now on.
Welcome, Mr. Bennett.
Janine tells me I only have half an hour, right, for my speech? Janine did call and asked about this. I thought it was a wonderful project. In 2005, Melissa, my wife Melissa, and I took a group of 40 people to Hof shortly after the Olympics, and I'd gotten involved with Scott Snedden. Scott Snedden was supposed to make that trip with us, and unfortunately he fell ill that year and was unable to make the trip with us, and did in fact pass away later that year. I had made a commitment to him to keep the Hof Ogden Sister City relationship alive, which we have done. We have made many good friends in Hof. We have brought some people here, and we have been there several times. In fact, Mayor Caldwell has been skiing with Herr Dr. Oberbürgermeister Fichtner and Florian Stössner, the assistant mayor, and some city council people who came in 2015. So we are the oldest Alsco branch in the world here in Ogden. We are one of the 2 or 3 oldest businesses in Ogden. And the Hof Ogden sister relationship is the oldest relationship between the U.S. and Germany. So we have a lot in common. We jumped on board. We wanted to support this project. We'll be happy to see this reminder of the sister city relationship going for years. And as such, we would like to make a donation. We are donating the funds to make sure the house gets built. And I have Nina Canning here from our corporate offices. I brought this because I wasn't sure Nina was going to find it, but we did find a bigger check.
Wow.
So, Mayor and City Council, on behalf of Alsco and the Steiner family, a 4-generation company, and the Steiner Foundation, donate $3,000 plus, whatever it takes, to bring this Christmas Village house as a replica to the city of Ogden, and recognize the work of those who have already been mentioned, Mark Hillis and Gary Womack and the others. We look forward to displaying it at the Hof Winterfest. Ask you all to attend. You're all invited. And next year it will be hopefully a regular setting at the Christmas Village.
This calls for another photo. Mayor, you want to come down with them and bring your people forward that are going to participate?
Don't mind. Down with them.
Trip over his luggage. Oh, yeah. Bank want to take it.
Signature. It's like winning the gold.
Right.
Take your word for it. Yeah. I've never been there. Can't say.
I don't know. I'm standing on my tiptoes.
Okay, think
Yeah,
salt
no.
flats.
Yeah, I didn't know you
Here
did
comes
that.
Janine.
Come on, Janine. There's a large obstruction up there. Off the stool.
I'll sneak right on his shoulder. Okay, well, I can go there or I can go there. One of the two.
I'm good.
Okay. I'll just got like tiny people back here.
Okay, I'm gonna take one this time. For you. This is going straight to Reiner.
Before your head's on the pillow.
Okay, I took your fork. Great.
It's more of a problem down there than he is up here.
I won't be here.
You over here? Okay.
That's why I would normally. That's why
Okay. All right.
I'm giving you a heads up.
Appreciate it.
Oh, diddly.
That's pretty exciting.
That is.
Yeah, we
awesome.
appreciate Bill Bennett's endeavors with respects to keep that sister-city relationship alive and vital. Brought a bunch of university students over just a few months ago from there to tour our fair city, and that was a lot of fun for me, particularly because I got to meet with them. All right. Well, next item on our agenda is approval of minutes of the closed executive session of October 10th, 2017.
Yes, Chair Heyer, I reviewed the minutes and found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection, and I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Blair to approve the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, now we have a report from the administration, Adams Community Reinvestment Project Area, and we caught Vice Chair Nadolski caught the error in the agenda, so you want
Sure,
to point that out?
We were going to point out this clarification during the presentation, but we can do it now. On the agenda, the interlocal agreement with Ogden City should read interlocal agreement with RDA, or the Ogden City RDA. Just so we're clear, we're in the city council meeting and we're not setting an agreement with ourselves, we're setting an agreement with the redevelopment agency.
That is correct. Thank you.
And the resolution, if or when we get to that point, we'll need to make the correction that the proposed resolution would approve the agreement with the RDA, but we'll get to that when it comes. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Thank you for your time. This will be really brief. As you know, you all acting as the RDA board this evening approved the Adams Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan and Budget. So as per state statute, we're required to present that to the community, which is the City of Ogden, and acting as the City Council to present to you proposed ordinance 2018-1, adopting by ordinance the same community reinvestment project area plan and budget. In addition to that, there's a second step that would also adopt the interlocal agreement between the agency and Ogden City. So just for the record, I won't cover the entire plan itself, but I would like to cover the interlocal agreement, which is essentially what the plan is made up of in terms of the budget. So you've seen these numbers before. The base year valuation for the project area is $60 million. The proposed project area expenditures from new investment would be about $124 million, which would then bring about a $95 million increased taxable value for that same district. In order to incentivize that $124 million worth of investment, it's necessary to have some available funds to do that. So the law allows us to enter into interlocal agreements. The agency has proposed an interlocal agreement with the city, which is what's in your packet, and that interlocal agreement would require a $2.5 million contribution from the city over a period of 25 years. That's a capped contribution, so it's the earlier of the max contribution or the 25-year period, whichever comes first. Once either one of those is met, then the the negotiation, or excuse me, the agreement is satisfied and is no longer in effect. So that's what's before you pertaining to Resolution 2018-1 with the interlocal agreement. And the project area plan is really the culmination of the interlocal agreements that make up the budget to allow us to bring about development across a number of projects. Those projects, again, being the Ben Lomond Garage, the Peary Apartments, multiple areas that could have new developments with single-family homes and multifamily homes. And I appreciate Board Member Stevens mentioning the creative district. That's something that I failed to mention in the last meeting, but that's an important part of this whole area. The arts district and the culture district that's being worked on now is an effective way to bring artists into this area, to promote the creative class, to promote entrepreneurism and the things that really make a vibrant, robust city, creates jobs, helps people have upward mobility. So this project area will help enable that to happen, and it will also enhance the project area. So that's a brief overview of both the project area plan and the interlocal agreement. Again, the plan is being brought to you to be approved by ordinance as the community body.